Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of Project Fairlady. So the old girl's been keeping me pretty busy lately, hence the reason why not a lot of content coming out on the old YouTube channel, due to that very fact of being tied up doing all the body work on this thing. So currently, everything from the top of the doors down is paint shop ready, bar it's got to have a final rub down when it goes into the paint shop. It's been blocked within an inch of its life many times over, right down to the whole thing being blocked down with 400 to try and pick up any very minor imperfections. And at this stage there doesn't appear to be any, so it is dead straight with no imperfections that I can find of any kind. It's been reassembled. I've reassembled it all to do like a pre-fit up, so that I'm certain of all of the gaps, things, you know, like the door gaps, the panel gaps, how flush everything lines up, etc, and make any alterations to that, you know, before the thing's obviously in paint. And the way I've done it, working on panels individually, and taking everything off the car, you can get everything perfectly straight, but there's no saying that everything is really going to line up again perfectly, just to variations between the different panels and how they fitted together from the factory, and you know, all that sort of stuff, and the way that age affects things like this, you know, minor shunts here and there. So that's very important to do, is to make sure everything is fitted before it gets paint on it, because you don't want to be messing around with stuff once it's painted. You want to be able to just basically bolt everything on and have everything line up perfectly without having to put any effort into it, so that you don't risk doing any damage to anything. So yeah, that takes a little while. Like I say, even though you get everything straight, you then have to go over everything, hang all the panels, check all the panel gaps, you know, make any modifications that you need to get all the panel gaps right and all that kind of thing. All the Twin Z stuff is all fitted up now. It will be coming off and be painted individually, of course, but they have all been remounted. I had to make some minor adjustments to that stuff, because I initially did most of the fit up on it when the car had the original paint on it, and because it's all been bare metalled, you know, that's basically stepped everything in, and depending on the thicknesses of the paint that was behind it and how straight the panel was where it mounted on, it just means that there were some minor adjustments that needed to be done. Only very minor, but still, they definitely was a difference between how it sat before all the paint was taken off it. So this is where I'm up to at the moment, guys. I've moved on to doing the back hatch and that little piece of roof that sits along the back there behind the T-tops, between that and the rear hatch. So that's currently in bare metal. So how I did that, that's been done with paint stripper. So I've masked up about ½ an inch, 10 millimeters or so around the edge of the panel, and then paint stripped it, got all the paint off, got it down to bare metal, and then clean it all up, remove the tape, and then finish off right up to the edges with 80 grit on the whizzer. And what that does is it stops the paint stripper from bleeding in right up against the edge and getting in and around and behind stuff where you don't want it to be. You know you've got a definite point where you've finished using the paint stripper, and you know the remnants, anything that might be seeped into anything that's left, you know, will be completely gone. Now, as you can see here, the rear screen is still in the car, and so is the front windscreen. They will be coming out. I've purposely left those in. I've had people question me before and say, "Oh, what are you doing, Trevor? You're going to be doing a shit job. You can't do a good job without taking the screens out." And as I've said many times, the screens are coming out. They're just not the first thing that I'm taking out. The reason being is the screens stop all the shit falling in the car, and when you're doing everything like I am here at home in the shed, it certainly makes a lot of sense to be able to keep all the crap out of the car and contain everything. Also, the issue is that the screens aren't easy to get out of these things. When the car goes into the paint shop, the screens will be coming out then, and they will have a professional screen guy there. Either that or the screen guy will come here first, but it's not something that I particularly want to do, just because, you know, it's something I really had no experience in, getting these sort of bonded screens out. So it's just a minor thing to do then, is when you pull the screens, you really have to only clean up the recess where the screen sits I've stripped right down into the edge of the seal on the screens. So I've sort of gone over that top edge and down. So when we get the screen out and then prime all the area in where the screen sat and then rub it down, it'll be really easy to finish it off along that top edge. It'll just be a very, very quick process and a very, very minor thing to have to do to have it all ready. T-tops aren't done yet. Again, I'm working up and I'm working sort of forward. So I'll pull the T-tops out, I'll work on those individually. There's not a huge amount to do on those, just to sort of that side strip and get the old mouldings off them. And also there is then the opposite of this piece along here. There's that front strip above the windscreen. That's going to be stripped back to bare metal, and the same sort of process with that. In the recess where the T-top sits, that's all pretty good. That'll probably just be scuffed and rubbed down and maybe hit with some one-shot primer before we put colour on it. They'll all be black, so that bar across there, that whole infill area where the T-tops come out from, so when you take the T-tops out, it'll be black, and the strip across the front above the windscreen will be black as well, so it all sort of rolls over the glass, and that it all kind of looks the same and all looks black. That's my sort of preferred look for it, rather than having them in silver, which is the way they were done from the factory, which is also absolutely fine. Again, just a personal taste thing. But you can see how good a condition the body is in this thing, rust-wise. As you know, if you've been watching the videos, we've had pretty much no rust at all on the vehicle, other than a little tiny piece in the bottom of this driver's side rear quarter, right at the very bottom where the bumper bar bracket mounted on, which was very, very minuscule. There was a little bit to clean up where the old battery came out from, but again, that was just surface rust that needed cleaning off. There was no actual repairs that needed to be made or anything like that. And the sill replacement, which wasn't from rust, that was due to a previous bad repair from some accident damage that had just been done a bit on the dodgy side. But as you would have seen, that has a brand new genuine sill put in it. So the body on this thing is pretty much as good as you can get, I reckon. So what the process is now, I'm just finishing cleaning all this up. I've been over it with a whizzle with 80 grit on it to sort of condition the surface ready for hitting it with primer. So I'll be putting down an epoxy primer over the top of the bare metal, a couple of coats, 2 or 3 coats, and then we'll be starting to do any bodywork that needs to be done on this area, blocking it down, etc. This did have some hailstone marks in it, very tiny, but particularly along that piece across the top there, which will need to be filled. There's probably only half a dozen of them, and they are, like I say, they are very, very small. Obviously we'll catch those when we block it down, and where I filled the wiper hole, and that's about it really. So that's where I'm at with it, guys. So I'll keep going with this, and I'll get it in primer, I think, and you'll probably see it when it's in primer. So I'll be back. Alright guys, the hatch is looking pretty sorted now. It's up to the same stage as everything else on the car. In my opinion, it's defect free. It's been blocked down many times. It's now sitting in epoxy primer with a 400 grit scratch on it with a guide coat over the top, ready for another final rub down before it gets paint. So how I got from the painting stage that you would have just seen, which was the epoxy primer. As you saw, it was first bare metalled with a paint stripper, and then finished off around the edges with the DA sander with 80 grit. Then the whole panel is gone over with 80 grit on the DA, then all completely cleaned and washed down. It was then given a wash down with a zinc phosphate wash, which etches all of the metal surface, and then it sat for a couple of days because I had a heap of other stuff that I had to get done. Then once I was back into it, went over the whole thing again, 80 grit on the DA sander, before then starting the epoxy primer. So the epoxy primer was 3 coats basically, a light coat and then 2 sort of heavy wet coats. And then once that dried off, hit it with a guide coat, just using GMH black. And then after that, starting to block it down. So blocking it down with 220 on various stiff blocks, you know, like these guys that I've been using on it. And that highlights all your defects, you know, any lows and highs and all that sort of stuff. And then from there, it's just a matter of, you know, filling all the lows with body filler of whatever brand that you're using. And then just slowly straightening the panel. So, you know, sand your repairs, re-guide coat it, you know, check everything, maybe put in some more filler, guide coat it again, etc. After you get to that stage, you'll find you have quite a lot of bare metal areas again. So what I'll generally do then is give it another couple of coats of epoxy primer over the top, because basically the whole panel will have been worked on in various areas to various depths, and you'll often find that you you know, have a lot of sort of metal patches. So basically what I do is when I'm blocking down is you know, block down until I hit metal on any areas that are around any sort of a low where the guide coat's still sitting in, you know. So you end up with a lot of areas like that. Anyway, I'll generally re-epoxy primer it over the top and then give it another rub down with 220, and then go over any smaller imperfections that you'll find at that stage. And once the panel's good in that regard, I'll then clean it down with wax and grease remover. I'll then put 2 or 3 coats of 2-pack urethane high build over the top of that again. I'll then guide coat it and then start blocking it down again. What I'll generally do then is I'll lightly block it with 220 just to take any orange peel off the primer, and then I'll start on it with 400 and re-block the whole thing with 400. And providing there are no defects in it anywhere, it can then be guide coated and sat how it is now. So that's exactly how I got to this stage from the bare metal stage, and yeah, that's what you see there. Also, if you do find anything when you're at the 400 stage of blocking it down, you just have to make those repairs, because the sort of finer you go with your papers and the more sort of finer detail you're working in, you're likely to find little things that you've missed, depending on how good you are at this sort of stuff. Initially, when I started doing the bodywork on the Fairlady, I was missing quite a few things in those early stages, but as I've got a few more runs on the board and a bit of match fitness with all my blocking down and my bodywork stuff, I'm getting a lot better, so I'm getting less defects as I progress through the stages, so it's making it a lot easier and quicker for me to sort of complete panels as I go through them. So what I'm about to do now is just sit the Twin Z rear spoiler on there. It was finished previously in a previous batch when I was doing all the panels individually. I know it's going to probably mount on there, but from previous checks with it, it's going to need a bit of fit up work done to it. So I'll just go and grab that and we'll sit it on there and have a bit of a look at it. So here it is, guys. This is basically paint ready, just like the rest of the car. You can see here, I've actually fitted a reverse camera to it under there. That's just sort of been done a bit roughly at the moment, but it sits tucked in underneath the spoiler. You can't see it when it's on. Kind of gotten used to having a reverse camera. Not that I really rely on it, but it's a handy thing to have just to glance at, you know. So I thought, oh well, I might as well fit one to this thing. It does fit on here fairly well, but it's not perfect, and it still requires a little bit of work. Like I can't get the sides down as low as I want them and get it as far forward that way as I want. I've got it sort of biting me a little bit. I guess possibly being a little bit too particular with it, but again, I want everything to be right and how I want it. I don't want to be looking at stuff later on and thinking, gee, I wish I'd fixed that earlier on before it was painted. So that's where I am currently with it, guys. So what I'm moving into next, as I just mentioned, I've got to do some work on this rear spoiler just so that the fit up is exactly how I want that. It's really nice and straight now. It's actually taken a bit of work to get all the defects out of that, being a fiberglass piece. But it's now absolutely spot on. I've just got to sort the fit up and get it right. So from here, I'll take the T-tops out, I'll do some work on those, and I'll do the front strip across the front of the windscreen and down the side of the A-pillars on each side. So that's the A-pillar and T-top areas done now. That all turned out pretty good. I've actually put a lot of work into the drain areas for the T-tops. Just kind of smoothing out a lot of the factory stuff. There were issues with the drains and things. These drain points down here were protruding up higher than the sort of recess where the water sits in. They hadn't been sort of trimmed off from the factory. So I've ground the tops of those down to the bottom of that recess and then resealed all those areas, put all new seam sealer in over a lot of this area because there's multiple joins there and lots of spot welds. It's all pretty rough and pretty gnarly, and it's just not really good for water disbursement and guiding the water into the drain holes. Same on the back here, a lot of seam sealer that was cracked and gappy all up in around where all this sort of joins together and sort of in through here. Again, cleaning up the drain port and just getting it all so that water flows out really neat. These drains on the side, there's a gap right in the corner, front and back. They're actually blocked with seam sealer, or mostly blocked with seam sealer from the original build of the vehicle by Nissan. The seam sealer work was pretty messy, all in this whole T-top area, and in my opinion would be detrimental to having the T-tops leak and these channels not functioning as they should do. Basically all I've done is clean the channels up and detail them to the way I'm sure they would have been designed, because I haven't actually changed anything. I've just streamlined all of the sealer work and the way the drains come into that channel, which in my opinion they weren't finished off properly from the factory. But all good now, so that all worked out pretty well. Very happy with that. So yeah, we'll continue on. So for now, that's about it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of an update on the Fairlady. Bit of a slow process doing all the body work. If any of you guys have done this sort of stuff, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It just ends up, being something that sucks up hours like crazy. So next time I come back, hopefully all the body work will be finished, and we'll be possibly looking at, getting it ready to get into the paint shop. But anyway, as always, thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed, guys. Always a bloody pleasure to have you here. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so you can keep getting updates on the Fairlady and how it's going. And remember, my website's up now that has a few little bits and pieces that I've been making for this project that I have on there for sale. upperhandperformanceproducts.com.au. And as always, guys, I'll bloody well see you on the next one. Cheers.